Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome back for people who have been here before, and welcome anew to people who haven't. Hopefully, we'll see you more often. So, I think we're on Zoom. Have we started our Zoom? Okay, great. So, besides the audience here, we have people on Zoom, and that way they can see the presentation. And at the end of John's presentation, people will be able to ask questions. And we ask you to wait for the mic so everybody gets to hear, not only those in the room, but also those on Zoom. So just raise your hand and we'll have people coming around with the mic, and everybody will be able to ask the questions they want to of John. I just want to briefly thank everybody for coming in this rainy day. And we had hoped that we would be able to take a little walk, but because of the rain, we're not able to. But we're going to be doing programs every month, and we invite you to come back, and hopefully it will be a sunnier day. But you can look at how beautiful everything is. It's just been kept in such a beautiful representation of this holy spot. And then if you look out these windows, you can see the boulders. And anyway, you'll be seeing changes as we go along. I wanted to mention, if you haven't found the bathrooms and you need, they're out to the right by the door or out to the left of these doors. There's food, and there's going to be food to take home. So please feel free to take one we have leftovers, because we'd like it to be used and not be wasted. At the front, when you signed in, there's places where you can get buttons. So it shows your affiliation with the Immaculate Heart. Take a few and share with people. We also have bookmarks that are Karita Kent art. Yeah, and then on the back it has a QR code, so people want to find out more, it goes right to our website. So feel free to take a few bookmarks, there's different kinds. Also at the front is a postcard about Rebel Hearts. How many people have seen the movie? Oh, quite a few. So for those who haven't seen Rebel Hearts, it's the story of the Immaculate Heart Community when in the 60s they were testing out the waters for change. And it tells a beautiful story of how they evolved and a little bit of a glimpse of what they're doing today. So the movie is shown on occasion. It will be shown up here in 2026, but don't wait. Watch today or soon. It's just a beautiful documentary, and it shows many of our members and their path too, from being pious nuns to through until today they're Rebel Hearts. And you can find on the card, it has information of where it's streaming online. So that's a great thing. Then on your seats, there were two things that we put. One is a survey that we're hoping you'll answer some very brief questions about our program. Today with John's presentation is going to be super interesting, but we'd love to hear your perspective. And more importantly, to get your input on what kind of programming you would like to see up here. The truth is that we want to reflect the interests that you have. So if there's a spiritual speaker or a social justice speaker or somebody that you know would like to come and present, please fill out the form and let me know too, so we can start scheduling for 2026. So just so you know, 2026 is going to be a full, exciting year for us as we move into a new phase. You might know or might not know that we've already started to get some half-day retreats here. Unfortunately, they're not doing overnight, but there's going to be more information about those programs. And little by little, you'll see more and more activity here. So that's pretty exciting. We do have monthly activities in Los Angeles. This month, next Friday, we have Eunices Hernandez, who is a city council member. So I know some of you drove up from Orange County and Los Angeles. They're monthly. They're the same kind of lunches that you had here. It's not a charge. We hope people who love our programming get inspired to support our work. And on your chair also is a Friends of the Heart. So what is a Friends of the Heart? It's that you're affiliating, you love what we do, you want to know more about what we do, and you want to say proudly that you are our friend. Now, that could mean different things to different people. We'll have more activities up here, but we have activities down in the LA Basin, and when we're ready to travel. So as a member, we'll give you information. As a member of the Friends of the Heart, you'll get information on volunteer opportunities. There's tons happening already with members, but we're going to be very intentional in highlighting more programs. It also gives you an opportunity to hear about retreats and other activities. So please fill this out before you leave. There's pens in the front. And there's also information about joining our community as a member, which is a little different from Friends of the Heart. It's a different commitment, but you can find out all the information also on the table. So I don't want to overtalk, so I want to introduce Sherry, who will share more about the Immaculate Heart Community. Sherry's our president and PEO, and here she is. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Pam. This is a wonderful day for us, and we're going to be celebrating 3 different things. As Pam said, I'm Sherry Purcell. I'm the president and the principal executive officer of the Immaculate Heart Community. And on behalf of the Immaculate Heart Community, we welcome each and every one of you today, and hope that we'll see you many times into the future. So as I said, we're really aware that we're celebrating on 3 levels today and this weekend. First of all, as Pam said, we have had a gradual reopening of the property this year, just a soft opening where we have some individual groups coming on for prayer groups and that kind of thing. But we're gearing up for more activity next year, and this is the kickoff for that. And I don't have to tell you, since 2018 and the mud flow and the destruction of 9 buildings, there were 9 buildings that were swept away into the ocean that were essential for the kinds of programming that was going on up there. So it's taken us a while to regroup, and we're still finalizing some plans around this, but stay tuned. Because I think you're going to see some progress toward all of that in this next year. So we're celebrating, again, the expansion of our programs up here. As Pam mentioned, this is a lunch and learn. And what we do at a lunch and learn is we provide lunch and we learn, right? And Pam and I launched the Lunch and Learns in Los Angeles at our offices in Echo Park 3 years ago. And they've grown and they've become more and more successful. And I see several people who are regulars at our Lunch and Learn in LA, so thanks for coming up. But we're also going to start doing monthly Lunch and Learns up here. They're all Zoomed, so if you can't go to one or the other, you can get the link if you go to our website. So we're excited about expanding all of that. And then the third thing that we're celebrating today is the return of John McAndrew, who was he ran programs and retreats up there. So it all's kind of coming together this weekend. And tomorrow we actually have the Alumni Association from the Immaculate Heart College coming up, who will be hearing from John also. So our Lunch and Learn series, we have 3 things that we ask participants to do when you come. First is to, we're trying to educate each other on different topics relating to spirituality, justice, social justice, and so we come together to do that. While you're here or afterwards, we ask you to pray in your own faith tradition over whatever the topics are, whatever the issues are. And then we also ask you to figure out a way to act, some kind of action you can take away yourself based on what you're hearing. And all of this is designed for the Immaculate Heart Community to live out our goal statement, which calls us to hold reverence for all creation as we foster access of all people to truth, dignity, and full human development, and to strategically change practices and situations which impede such access. So that's kind of the idea about the Lunch and Learn and the programming that we're doing. So, John McAndrew, we're so glad that you're back with us. If you don't know John, he's a spiritual teacher, counselor, theologian, musician, hospice chaplain, and poet. Wow. With a background in literature, theology, music, and counseling, he served as a parish priest in the Diocese of Orange County for nearly 20 years. He's also worked in educational settings, corporate consultancies, detention facilities, and treatment centers. And during his tenure as Director of Spiritual Care at the Betty Forbes Center in Rancho Mirage, he began to incorporate all of those experiences into foundations which took shape in Sensible Spiritual Associates. John currently resides in Arroyo Grande in San Luis Obispo County, and he's recently retired, but he continues to facilitate retreats and workshops for people in recovery and offers spiritual counseling, grief counseling, and recovering support services of individuals and organizations seeking deeper spiritual development. Today, his topic is 12 Steps, the practice of nonviolence. Very timely topic for our days, right? So welcome back, John, and please join me in welcoming John.
Thank you very much. It is absolutely a joy to be back here, and I saw a lot of people doing what I was doing when I came in. It's just, oh, it's kind of cool to be back. I think it was maybe 2015, the last time I was here. My name's John. I'm an alcoholic in recovery, in long-term recovery from the family disease of alcoholism and addiction. We kind of say that sometimes at some of our 12-step meetings. And today, this is an idea that's been percolating for probably 20 years. Alcoholics Anonymous, for then any of you who are familiar with it a little bit, it sets itself out as a spiritual way of living, which surprises most people when they get there. Why would I need that? I've got a drinking problem. But it hopefully we'll have a better understanding of that as we go through today. Now, first things first, you guys, Gabby and where did Dean go? There they are. Give them a big hand. They just saved my life earlier. They got this thing going for me. So here we are. As I said, my drinking career began early. As soon as I could get my hands on something to drink. I probably needed a drink before I went to school, but it was a while before I was able to take that deep breath and discover that I really liked getting drunk. And that's probably not your story, and that's a good thing. My drinking career sort of flamed out in my 20s. By the time I was in my mid-20s, I had been incarcerated on a number of occasions. I had a little history with the judicial system. It had been suggested by the courts that perhaps I should do something about my drinking. And they actually sent me to Alcoholics Anonymous, and which I didn't really appreciate very much. But I went, and I'm grateful for that introduction. My drinking career was unlike, it wasn't a horrible thing. If you looked at me, you probably wouldn't have known. I didn't look like your classic alcoholic. I was just a guy who really enjoyed a party. But a party included a lot of drinking. And so if we didn't have that, I wasn't interested. So besides the opportunities to visit the Orange County Jail and Theo Lacey facility and all of those places, I was kind of a train wreck in my personal life, relationships. I was incredibly selfish. I was young and arrogant. I was a disaster, but I looked fine. So when I finally arrived in Alcoholics Anonymous, when I came all the way in and sat all the way down, I was really convinced of the fact that I had a problem with drinking, and I didn't know what to do. So these folks in AA, that's a symbol of AA. You ever seen that before? Okay. And they say that this stands for recovery, this is unity, and this is service. Those are the three parts of the triangle. In AA, I finally got my feet under me and began to kind of get rid of some of those old ideas that I had learned as a kid. And it so happened that I had grown up in this nice Catholic family, and so I grew up thinking that I was very spiritual. And there's nothing worse than a spiritual arrogance. You know, arrogance is one thing, but spiritual arrogance is a special kind of arrogance. And I was displaying all of that. And so one of the things that happened, I'd been teaching in a Catholic school, and I thought, you know what, maybe I should go be a priest. And so I decided that I would do that. But they accepted me at St. John's Seminary in Camarillo, and 4 days after my acceptance there, I got arrested for drunk driving for the third time. And they said, why don't you go work yourself out a little bit and figure out what you want to do with your life. When I reapplied a year later, convinced that I was in fact alcoholic, they were not all that excited to hear from me again. But they did take me in, and so I had this wonderful experience of getting clean and sober and studying theology all at the same time. It was a little bit like being in a long-term residential treatment facility. A little bit. You know, you had jobs to do, you had classes to attend, you went to prayer 4 or 5 times a day, you did all these different things, and we were able to kind of move forward in life. So today we're going to focus on what I would call two of the most transformative spiritual movements of the 20th century. The first one is, and I'll call it this, whether you do or not, the foundation of Alcoholics Anonymous. Today there are probably millions and millions and millions of people, primarily in the English-speaking world, who have been helped by the Alcoholics Anonymous program. It is a spiritual program. As I said, that's surprising to a lot of people. It has foundations or roots in 20th century American Christianity, and that stands for white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Yankee male. It's very patriarchal, it's very old school. It comes out of the Oxford group, which came out of Lutheranism and Frank Buckman. You can look all that up. Very interesting history, but it's rooted in the American ideals of the early 20th century, as well as those Christian ideals. The other movement is the modern nonviolence movements that many of you are familiar with. And this has roots in Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism, and yes, even in Christianity. We'll talk a little bit about that. These two movements have come together in this pilgrim's life in a funny way. And that's basically what I want to kind of share with you today. A little bit of that journey for me, and possibly it might stir the pot a little bit for you in your understandings of nonviolence and the disease of addiction. I first got into Pax Christi USA when I was at St. John's Seminary. We founded the first chapter of Pax Christi. Anybody familiar with Pax Christi? Yeah. It's a Catholic peace organization. And around that time, the U.S. bishops had written a really powerful encyclical on war and peace, and so we were all very excited by that. I was reading about nonviolence, doing a lot of things. I was beginning to kind of move in that direction. I came to a peacemakers retreat here at La Casa de Maria in 1987. And it was a turning point for me. You recognize that guy? Yeah. Dan Berrigan was giving the retreat, and there were a number of people from the area. I was in my first year of theological studies at St. John's Seminary, and it was just, it opened my mind. It really did open my mind to the power of nonviolence. He was one of those nonviolent prophets. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. When people speak about nonviolence, in our experience, it's generally Gandhian nonviolence. So I'll tell you what we're not going to do today. We're not going to take a deep dive into Gandhian nonviolence. We could, but we're not. There's plenty of information out there. You want a nice start? Go watch the movie Gandhi. If you haven't seen it, I'm sure you can find it streaming online. Well worth the 4 hours. Really worth the 4 hours. Gandhi coined this term, satyagraha. I don't think I'm saying it correctly. It's from the Sanskrit, and it literally means the truth, holding firmly to the truth force. And this was his ideal of how to do it. He went into great depth, not only in his writings, but in his practice, ascertaining the truth, attempting negotiation, self-purification, nonviolent action, and acceptance of consequences. These are all parts of the modern, and this movement, of course, sprang from oppression, as so many amazing movements do. It sprang out of the oppression that he experienced. That satyagraha is an active spiritual or moral resistance to injustice without resorting to force. Okay, there's the key right there, and that's really on a personal level. I don't think there's a human being alive who doesn't come up against that conundrum. How do I respond to injustice or violence without resorting to the very thing that is hitting me? So this is a practice. He said, it's really the important question, how to overcome oppression and violence without resorting to oppression and violence. He was known as Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma means the venerable, the great-souled one. Okay, it was an honorific title. And he died, of course, by assassination, which often happens to people who are prophets of nonviolence. Martin Luther King, we're familiar with the civil rights movement and his leadership. The choice between violence and nonviolence? No. Between nonviolence and non-existence. I think even more so in our day today than it's ever been. That we're looking for a radical shift in consciousness. And I think the nonviolent movement is exactly that. Cesar Chavez, some of you probably were involved in the great boycotts in Delano. First principle of nonviolent action, non-cooperation with everything humiliating. That'd be a good start. Wouldn't that be a nice place to begin? Okay. And not just for me, but when I see a sister or brother in that situation, that I'm going to be working towards this. Some other prophets of nonviolence, starting in the upper left, there's Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela. Lech Walesa, the Solidarity Movement in Poland. Rosa Parks, great civil rights leader. Thich Nhat Hanh in the center, the almost saintly Dorothy Day, and Lech Walesa in the Velvet Revolution, and the first president of the Czech Republic. There are dozens and dozens of others, people who have taken this vision of nonviolence, really Gandhian nonviolence, to move forward in a way of being and a way of acting in the world. The nonviolent movement struck me personally because I'm a wuss. I don't like to fight. I don't want to get involved in that violence. I'd get beat up. But it's not just that. It was kind of creeping in because I'd grown up Catholic, and you walk into a Catholic church and there's that horrible, horrible, bloody crucifix. What the hell is that? And trying to make sense of that, I've come to some understanding of it finally. And sometimes it's just bad art, but as an icon, the idea is, yeah, it's horrible. In fact, for the first 8 centuries in the Christian tradition, you never saw an image of the crucified Christ. You saw the ictus, you saw the lamb, you saw a lot of different things, but you never saw the crucified one because it was just too shameful. An execution at the hands of the Roman oppressor, it was just too horrible to even consider. And as it wormed its way in, it took on a lot of different meanings. And let me this is not part of what I wanted to do today, but I'll mention it because we're here. Anybody familiar with substitutionary atonement theory? Yeah, you all got it. You all got it. Substitutionary atonement theory goes something like this. God the Father, this is very patriarchal, God the Father sent his Son to be murdered because God the Father demanded that there be blood to satisfy the sin of you. Of you. And that was the only way it could be satisfied, is blood. Okay? And so Jesus died for your sins. You ever hear that? Oh, yeah. Substitutionary atonement theory. It's gross, it's vulgar, it's wrong, isn't it? Absolutely. Absolutely wrong. And yet almost all of us got some version of that. Yeah. Okay, so that's a little aside, but it seemed wrong. And what I've come to understand is Jesus as the ultimate prophet of nonviolence. Oh, well, he turned over the tables, and yeah, why did he do that? He didn't slap somebody in the face. These are the people who were making money. Oh, these are the people who are making money off religion. Oh, these are the people who are trafficking. They were selling indulgence. Oh, no, they were selling the animals for sacrifice. People who were monetizing religion. I digress. I got sober, and I was in this long-term treatment center, and I was beginning to encounter some of these ideas of nonviolence. And in this time, I encountered the 12 steps. I gave you a little handout, which I realized afterwards the font size is so small as to be almost useless, but nonetheless, inside of here are the 12 steps and 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm going to do a quick romp through them. You probably don't need this, but it's my way of kind of being able to identify some of these principles that have come together in my life. So I've divided them into 3 sets. The first set up here is really the foundation. We're powerless and our lives have become unmanageable. We've come to believe in a power greater than ourselves, that could restore us to sanity, and we made a decision to turn our will and lives over to the care of God. Okay, you got to ignore the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Yankee male language, the patriarchal language. It just says 1935. In 1935, Bill Wilson was trying to be as inclusive as he possibly could. And the first few people in AA, they had a couple of Catholics and a Jew, and they thought that was radically inclusive in 1935. So, but the language is a stumbling block for many people even today. But I want to try and get beneath that. So if you have trouble with the language, welcome to the club. Don't get caught up in it. The second part here, I think of this as the work. And you'll notice that those are kind of divided into get ready and go steps. So 4th step is get ready. 5th step, you go. 6th step, get ready. 7th step, 8, you see how it works? Okay. So that's the work, and we're going to come back and talk about all of these. And finally, steps 10, 11, and 12, we continue to do this, and this becomes a lifetime practice. So here is really the first 3 steps, admitting that you're powerless. Does anyone know what that feels like? Huh? What does powerlessness feel like? I can't do anything. Or as the wonderful Zen koan, I used to have this on my desk for years. It had a picture of the Dalai Lama smiling, that radiant smile that he had. And the koan says, when you can do nothing, what can you do? And you know how a koan works, right? Koan is a Buddhist form of teaching, and the idea is you take that to meditation basically until your head explodes, okay? And you realize this is not a binary either-or question where you get the answer. The idea is you take it and you learn to live with the paradox, right? We admitted that we're powerless, that our lives have become unmanageable. Here was my experience. Alcohol had taught me everything I needed to know about alcoholism. I knew I couldn't drink. I was less clear on this business of unmanageability. I thought, well, if I don't drink, my life will be manageable, right? Not quite. The second step, when I first came to it, I skipped it because I didn't like the insinuation that was being given there. What kind of person would need to be restored to sanity? Only somebody who was in fact insane, and I was not really ready to acknowledge that at that point, okay? And in the third step, we made a decision to turn our will and our life. And so I grew up Catholic, and I thought, you know, I learned to say the morning offering, and so I'll just say the morning offering prayer. Oh, Jesus, the Immaculate Heart Community. You know that one, don't you? Some of you might have. Those first three steps were, I wasn't going to argue with them. I really wasn't going to take them. I wasn't very interested in them, but I could see that they had benefit for those people that I was meeting at the meetings. This is some of the language, whoops, that was too fast. This is some of the language that we warped our minds, the obsession, the bankruptcy. This is the experience of what alcohol does to the alcoholic, okay? And so the experience of step one was utter hopelessness. Also, just as an aside, this is for another day, but the disease of alcoholism is, the concept that alcoholism is a disease is something that AA championed. Nowadays, now that we have addictionologists and lots of insurance money and all kinds of things, people are going, well, we're not really sure it's a disease after all. And one of the things you'll discover is that Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, and that's an outside issue. So for me, this is an analogy, if nothing else, that seems to work. I'm alcoholic. I have a disease. I'm not a bad person who needs to get good, but I am ill. I have a disease, and I need treatment so that I can get better. Okay? It takes the moralizing out of it, right? Which is very, very helpful for people. Most alcoholics live with a tremendous degree of shame, okay? And hopelessness. So the first step is really hopeless. You know, great, I'm powerless and my life is unmanageable. Okay, I've admitted it. Swell. Now what am I supposed to do? Well, there are 11 more steps, so we're going to kind of move through them. We had to fully concede. This admission, this surrender. I don't drink like other people. Huh? So those are the first three steps. In the 4, 5, 6, 7, we're talking about the work. Okay, 4 and 5 these are called the inventory steps. And when we're doing inventory in AA, have you ever done a searching and fearless moral inventory of yourself? Huh? Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Huh? No, most of us would prefer to live the unexamined life, right? It's a lot more comfortable. Huh? Now, what happens is, when do we make searching and fearless moral inventories of ourselves? Often in relationship. Somebody else calls us out, and it comes in our face. This is an exercise that I had never encountered anything like that. Oh, I grew up Catholic. I knew how to go to confession, and I knew all of those things, you know. But this is different, okay? Admitting to get, and then So you do this as a written thing, and then you sit down with another human being and you read out loud everything that you said, the exact nature of our wrongs. No pussyfooting around. You got to say what it was, and it's a written thing. So the way it's described in the book of AA, which I carry around with me like this is kind of my holy book, but it's been a very helpful text for me. It says that this is a strenuous effort to face and to be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us. So to remove the obstacles to moving forward. Sound like a good thing now? You still don't want to do it. No, and none of us did either, except that there were all these other people saying, well, we did it, and it really helped. So we move forward with it. And then there's 3 things we're going to look at. Step 4 and 5. We're going to look at resentments. We're going to look at our fears, driven by 100 forms of fear. And we're going to look at sex and relationships. So now are you interested? No, because those are the areas where most of us are feeling our most, this is where we carry a lot of our shame. These areas of our life, especially resentment. Resentment, it says, is the #1 offender. In the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says that it's the #1 offender. More people die of, oh, never mind. I get confused sometimes. It affects us more deeply than almost anything else. When I did my first inventory, a written inventory, I was ready to talk about fear and sex because I felt a lot of shame around some of that stuff. I said, I don't have any resentments. And they laughed at me until somebody finally said, John, you're not pissed off at anybody? And I said, oh, yeah, sure. I got a lot of grudges, and yes. And so I was able to understand what they were talking about. So the thing that when I was all done with it, my sponsors then said, so now tell me the one that you are going to take to your grave with you. And I kind of sat up and went, how did he know? Because I wasn't going to say that out loud. I was sure not going to put it on paper. And yeah, it was there. And when an amazing thing happened, when I said it out loud, it lost half of its power instantly. It's amazing. Yeah. You're only as sick as your secrets. The process of self-examination continues in 6 and 7. This is about readiness, really. We're entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. I humbly asked him. This, I found, takes a lot of time. So we're moving forward. The steps are meant to create some space within where something new can happen. In the 8th step, we're making a list of all the persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them. And what we're doing there is we're taking responsibility. We're not explaining ourselves to them. We are going to be responsible for our own behavior. And it's about amendment means what? It means changing. Right? So I'm changing my life. This is not about apologizing and saying, I'm sorry. If you grew up around alcoholism, you've heard the alcoholics say 1,000 times how sorry they are, and then they go do it again. It's just that vicious cycle. So this is all about changing our behavior. So willing to make amends, this is just a list. No harm, no foul, just I'm going to make a list of people that I've harmed. Could you do that today? Would you be willing to? Okay, I'll make a list. I don't have to do anything, and then to become willing to go back and make amends, direct amends to them. Because the 9th step says we're going to go back and do that with the people we've harmed. We're going to go back to them and say, I was wrong, I'm sorry, I intend to never do that again. And we're not going to ask to be forgiven. We're just going to leave it at there. We're going to take our responsibility and we're going to make changes in our life. Now, this is not what you expected to find in Alcoholics Anonymous, is it? It sure was not what I expected to find. I thought I could go there and find out how to not drink. Okay? Steps 10 through 12. Love and tolerance of others is our code. This is from the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And we have ceased fighting everything and everyone, even alcohol. We're not fighting it. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. I'm trying to do this practice. I'm trying to take these steps. I'm studying scripture. I'm talking in our Pax Christi group about nonviolence. I'm starting to put together some of these ideas and realizing we're all talking the same thing. Richard Rohr is one of the great teachers of my life, and he does a wonderful job of talking about what he calls the perennial tradition. And these are the spiritual truths that you'll just find everywhere at all times throughout the world, throughout all of human history. And this notion of nonviolence, I think, is one of those through lines that we've paid a lot of attention to the histories of war. We've glorified war, and now we've got a Department of War again. Aren't we lucky? How about a Department of Peace? What would that look like? So steps 10, 11, and 12 are a lifetime practice. We continued to do these things, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. My sponsor one time when we were working through the steps asked me what I thought was the most important word in that step, and I said, well, of course, it's continue to do this. And he said, yeah, that'd be true for most people, John, but the most important word for you is when. It's not if. When you are wrong, you will be wrong regularly, and you will be asked to admit it promptly. That was not a practice that was part of my daily life at all. Learning to say, I was wrong, I'm sorry. To improve our conscious contact. I think this little expression is one of the real gifts that Alcoholics Anonymous has given into my life. This is a way of talking about prayer and meditation. Conscious contact. It's a lovely expression because it talks about the raising of our consciousness. And in the 12th step, this is where we've had this spiritual awakening, and now we're going to try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. All of these steps have different principles, I believe, that are linking it to the actual practice of nonviolence. And there's a few more that I wanted to note right here in the 12 traditions. And I'm just going to fly through these real quickly. But these are some of the principles that you'll see if you have that there in your hand, the 12 traditions. I didn't print them all up for you up here. But in the 12 traditions, there's a nice picture of the phoenix. Why is the phoenix such an important symbol for people in recovery? Because of that renewal coming out of the ashes. Wonderful poem by D.H. Lawrence, and if we have time, I'll share that with you. The principle of unity, okay? Our common welfare should come first. It says personal recovery depends upon AA unity. So the 12 steps, I heard it described this way. The 12 steps for the alcoholic, this is how we don't have to commit suicide. This is how we have a way out of our suicide. And the 12 traditions, this is how AA members and groups keep from homicide. We keep from killing one another. These are traditions that developed over the first 15 or 20 years of AA's existence of how are we going to make this work. And it's a fascinating structure. We won't get into it in depth, but you'll see that this is not like most organizations. Unity is the key. For our group purpose, it says there is but one ultimate authority. A loving God is expressed in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. There's no bosses. There's no president of AA. If you write to central office complaining about something, they'll send you back a form letter and they'll remind you that we have these traditions. And so work it out. That's how it goes. Rotating leadership is another part of this nobody's in charge thing. So we every year we have new leaders, or every 2 years, depending on the group, so that you might have been the leader of that group for a year, but then when you're done, you just go back to being another member around the table. There's no bosses. The only requirement for membership in Alcoholics Anonymous is a desire to stop drinking. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to be anything else. You don't have to believe in anything. You can be atheist and agnostic and be a member of this. Even though if you look at the language, it sounds pretty darn Christian, right? But in fact, there's no belief system at all. It's very much the practice of the 12 steps is, in my experience, very much like the practice of Buddhism. In Buddhism, there is no deity, of course, but there are practices that will help you to live a certain way. The same thing applies to the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Although there's a lot of that white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Yankee male 20th century evangelical Christianity in there, what people have discovered is, no, the principles underlying that are kind of universal. So the only requirement is that you have a desire to stop drinking. That's it. You can be and do anything you want. Number 4, each group is autonomous. Okay, so here's a group that says, we're going to rewrite these steps for ourselves. We're going to change the language of these, and they call themselves an AA group. And somebody else around the corner is outraged. You can't change that. You can't change it. And they write a letter to central office, and they get back a form letter saying, sorry, each group is autonomous. You guys work it out. There's no overlords, okay? Group autonomy is really important. And each group has a primary purpose, and the only purpose is to help carry a message of hope so that people don't have to keep dying of alcoholism and addiction. In the 6th step, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. You ever heard about those before? Money, property, and prestige? Yeah, these are the great temptations of every individual and every group, right? So we don't buy into that either. The 7th step tells us that we're self-supporting. And that means that if you think, wow, what a great organization, I'd like to give them a donation, they won't accept it. John Rockefeller J.D. Rockefeller wanted to give early Alcoholics Anonymous $50,000, a ton of money. And they said, no, we can't really do that. And that was a good lesson, an early lesson in being self-supporting. Also non-professional. Our service centers may employ special work. There's no professional aid. Now, there's a lot of people who work in the field. I worked at Betty Ford Center for a while, helping people, but I'm not representing AA, nor am I representing AA today. Anything I say, it could be complete BS. So don't believe me, okay? I don't represent AA. But in this context, I'm trying to get at these principles. We should never be organized. Here's the great secret in Alcoholics Anonymous. The lunatics are running the asylum. And it's working. And it has worked for 85 years, okay? It's continuing. Then the last 3 are all about anonymity. We have no opinion on outside issues. The AA name ought never be drawn into outside controversy. So this kills lots of organizations. There was a group called the Washingtonians, and they had tens of thousands of people got sober, and Abraham Lincoln spoke to their convention, but then they also picked up as abolitionists, and it divided them. The amazing thing in Alcoholics Anonymous is, I don't know how it happens to work, but at the door, everyone puts aside their politics and their religion. When it doesn't happen that way, we work it out. We have to, because our lives depend on it, okay? The principle of anonymity is really a big one. It's a spiritual foundation. It talks about the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, reminding us to place principles before personalities. That's a nice little code to live by, isn't it? Okay. So here is the key to this whole thing, some shared principles, and if I could get a hand here, Could you pass these out to people? If you don't mind, just take those. These are some of the shared principles between AA and the movements of nonviolence that I think might be useful for further conversation and for us going forward. The principle of humility and ego reduction. Both AA and nonviolent teachings emphasize letting go of ego and self-will. Gandhi spoke about reducing oneself to zero. Higher power 12-step programs focus on admitting powerlessness, the ego deflation at depth they talk about a lot. Okay? Also, focusing on truth, satyagraha, the moral truth, and moral inventory. Rigorous honesty is a key to what we do when we're doing that kind of moral inventory, being honest about ourselves particularly. Service, absolutely essential in Alcoholics Anonymous, not optional. And quite often you will find sponsors taking newcomers out on what we call a 12-step call, an opportunity to go carry the message to another alcoholic. And they don't know what they're doing. They go, I don't have anything to say. I've got nothing. Just come along. Just come along. And what they discover is that the person who's got 6 months sober has a lot more to say to a brand new person than I do with 43 years. A lot more, because they're closer to it. I'm grateful for the years, but I also know there's a radical equality. And again, it's one of those principles that we're looking for. So service, inner transformation is an absolute key in this work. And if you think back on what Gandhi was writing about, what Martin Luther King was, what Chavez, what so many of them have noted is this inner transformation. We're not really trying to win so much as we are to help people to find that same transformation that we have found in our lives. The non-retaliation and forgiveness, that Christian ideal of turning the other cheek, making amends in step 8 and 9, letting go of resentment. These are key principles. And ultimately, the fellowship and community that are part of it. You can't do this alone. The first step in the 12 steps, the first word in the first step is the key to the whole program. We admitted. So, and people will say that all the time at meetings. It's a we program. Communities of nonviolence, communities of resistance, they have that sense of fellowship and oneness that we are doing this. It's not any one person who's trying to do that. These are some of the principles that we might look at. I'm going to conclude with this. This is a poem that I wrote years ago, but it's called Recovery. On the first day, I didn't know it was the first day. The second, third, and fourth passed. And on the 8th day, something remarkable, but I didn't tell anyone. Remarkable, and I didn't know. I noted some markers like weekends and seasons, anonymous months. No one else attended every day of the long, long time, but some noticed the unclenching. Evening and morning came the 90th day. Some days later, in an afternoon walk, beauty opened and I inhaled. Religion preceded and followed and did no harm, but the weight of a carapace and a quiet, sober dream offered commentary on death. So dying is essentially part of it, not killing. And dying, essentially, the most beautiful song. After 10,000 days, I knew the counting would never end. But this interest in ordinary time sustains itself in a still, thirsty soul. So I appreciate your attention today. And I'm hoping that we can make some connections. So observations, objections, questions, anything at all that's come up for you. If we, if I stirred the pot a little bit, that's good. Oh, good. Okay. Okay. Has anybody got an opening thought? Yes.
It sounds like a very clear message for giving to prisoners. Do you visit prisons and give this lecture?
I used to, when I was a priest in the Diocese of Orange, I used to be able to carry that message into jails and prisons. It's a message that oppressed peoples, prisoners, I think it's why religion emerged, isn't it? To offer a message of freedom. Authentic religion always moves us in the direction of greater freedom, right? And you're right, people who are imprisoned are very receptive to it. I can't tell you the number of times meeting guys in jail and they Father, I want to get baptized. And so I'd say, well, what's your drug of choice? Meth and alcohol. I said, let's talk about meth and alcohol before we talk about baptism. Let's see what we might do there, huh? Because they're looking for magic, and there's no magic. Yeah. But it is. You're right. You're absolutely right. It's a message for people who are experiencing what we call in AA the bondage of self. Isn't that a lovely expression? Yes. Relieve me of the bondage of self. That's my prayer when I swim laps, and relieve me of the bondage of self. Relieve me of the bondage. It's very helpful. Go. Question in the back? Yes?
Thank you. I think when you were talking about religion there in the beginning, I think maybe they weren't wrong. They're not wrong. It's a misinterpretation.
What's that?
Well, you were talking about the cross, when you go in and you see the bloody cross.
Oh, the crucifix. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
the whole interpretation of what happened. For the disciples, they were there. They have a right to their interpretation. But I think anybody after that sort of came up with dogma, their own ideas. And so it's one interpretation, but it could be not necessarily correct.
Right.
And I think that's why people have to individually go to God to find out what is the right way for them, and it might be only one right way for everyone, but it's expressed differently. But you find that out on your own. So I would like to sort of give them a Buddhist, let them off the hook by saying it's a misinterpretation of phenomenon.
I didn't understand that.
It's a misinterpretation of phenomenon than the Orthodox idea of this is what happened and why. And we have proof in the Bible.
Right.
And that's very hard for people.
Right. And I think this is in any kind of a religious teaching, you have a leader, and you have a tradition, a teaching, and then you have all the interpretations, all the questions that come down. And that's true in every religious tradition. And they fracture quite often, and they break off, and they go in a million different ways. Yeah, and I don't have a solution. Yes. Here we are.
I'm curious about making amends as someone who's never been part of AA.
Yes.
How does anyone get to that point of wanting to make amends without wanting forgiveness and understanding and healing?
It's a good question, because I think I misunderstood it for a long time. So the 8th step, 9th step, the making a list and then going back to people and making the amends, is all about taking responsibility for my own behavior. So if I've stolen money from you, I I need to go back and say, I stole, $75,000 from you. That was wrong. I intend to pay it back, but I'm not working right now, so what if I give you $20 a week? That's never going to pay you back, is it? But it's an acknowledgement that I owe that to you. And so paying it back would be part of it. What I'm doing is taking responsibility for the wrongdoing. I am not asking you, sometimes you hear people do this, they'll go back and they'll say, I'm sorry I did this, will you forgive me? Mm-hmm. That's emotional blackmail. I'm trying to take responsibility for my own behavior, and then I'm going to dump all this load in your lap? That's not fair. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm telling you that I was wrong.
So is it giving up the desire to repair the relationship?
Mm-mm.
No?
It's actually creating the fertile ground where an honest, good, authentic human relationship can grow. We can't, reconciliation is the goal, right? Mm-hmm. But have you ever been in a situation where you tried to reconcile and they wouldn't?
Yes.
That's right, because you can't effect reconciliation. All you can do is create a space where it might happen. But there's no guarantee, because I want a reconciliation, that there's ever going to be an actual reconciliation. There are many people who die unreconciled. I think that's one of the great pains in human hearts. Working with hospice, you'd see that at the end of life. When people had estrangements or they're cut off from family members, it's just nothing that we can do and nothing that they can do at that point, probably. That's going to change it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
So first of all, thank you for sharing all that. And in response to this last question too, my experience, I've been in Al-Anon for 27 years. Mm-hmm. So I've done the steps several times and there's nothing like them. And also, just to share my experience about that, when you get to that step, you've done so much of the other work, especially the fourth step, where you do the inventory, where I know for myself, I wasn't looking for forgiveness. I needed to just say, this is what I did, and also without explanation, oh, I did this because, no.
Right.
All I'm saying is, this is what I did, and I want to make amends to you. Mm-hmm. So, but I can hear where you're coming from, because when you go, if you hadn't have gone through all of those first steps, then you might feel that way. But once you go through that, you're like, okay, this is all me. This is all me. And how can I heal? And from the other end, I received amends from somebody once who was the last person in the world. I've wanted amends from people who I never got them. But the last person, and it was such an amazing experience. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And afterwards, I did not feel like we were going to walk on the beach and sing Kumbaya. But I did, I thanked him, and it was like a sacred experience, that someone was really saying, here's what I did. You don't know that I did this. So the steps are really.
And thank you, Roz, for mentioning Al-Anon. Al-Anon is actually, the only requirement for membership in Al-Anon is that you know somebody who has an issue with alcoholism, which by my calculation, that's pretty much the whole world. Everybody's got somebody that they know, who's got a problem. Al-Anon is in many ways a harder program to work. I've been a member of Al-Anon now for 17, 18 years. It's very thorough, and what it has done in my life is it makes me re-examine all the old ideas that I've lived my entire life with. It's very thorough, and it's really a wonderful way of life. It's the same 12 steps. The only word that they changed is when it says carry this message to alcoholics, it says carry the message to others. Otherwise, same 12 steps. and as a way of life, especially if you're looking to try and live a nonviolent life. This is kind of how I need to conclude this. My experience of these two very significant 20th century spiritual movements is how I came to understand the 12 steps, not only as a treatment for alcoholism, which they certainly have been, and a path to sobriety and recovery, but also a practice of applied nonviolence that offered me a transformative way to move forward in my life. Basically, I became an unwitting disciple of this program of nonviolence, and it's continuing to change me. Other thoughts, questions? Yes, in the back there.
I do want to thank you very sincerely for your transparency and for being able to really talk us through your life and all the things that,
That's all I got. I'm sorry.
well, you know, that requires a lot of transparency and a lot of honesty and a lot of disclosure. I'm a practicing psychotherapist, and I believe that the 12 steps are good for anyone and everyone. We don't have to be addicted to any substance to really benefit from these 12 steps.
Right.
And you present the antidote to, you know, resentments and shame. Those are things that people bring to therapy. And for those who don't come to therapy, don't believe in therapy, these are the antidote to that, to create a new life and become a whole person again. So thanks very much for really kind of humanizing the 12 steps and bringing it home to everyone in an everyday kind of way.
Thank you very much. Thomas Keating, some of you may be familiar with, he does centering prayer. He has written somewhere that, and I'm paraphrasing here, that he believes that if you don't have a spiritual practice, some kind of a regular spiritual practice, that we, all humankind, are at very, very high risk of becoming addicted to something. And if it's not a substance or another person or a process, if it's not that, what happens is we become addicted to our own thinking. That is a disastrous addiction. That will kill you. To be addicted to your own thing. Relieve me of the bondage of my thinking. Relieve me of the bondage of self. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Any other comments, thoughts, objections? Yes.
I had something. Thank you very much.
Hold on just a second.
We'll get your mic here.
No. Thank you for today. I thought it was very refreshing, if not empowering, focusing on peace, and the promotion of peace, nonviolence versus kind of where we are today. There's so much division, whether it's on the roads or with people, neighbors, struggling with tolerance, and standing up for those who are, being victimized or in suffering. You want to stand up for people, yet, you got to keep control of your own behavior, right? So I was wondering if there's any other programs other than AA that, with your background that you support. There's a lot out there, right? Like I recently learned about Refuge, this
Refuge
program.
Recovery, yeah.
Are there any other things that you're supporting right now, just to share in terms of just knowledge?
Yeah, Refuge Recovery, for those that are unfamiliar, is a Buddhist recovery program, which uses the same principles, see? But that's for people who they don't want that God stuff. Fair enough, fair enough. That language is a huge obstacle to many, many people in recovery. And I'm lucky that I grew up in a time when there really wasn't any other, there was no alternative. Even the courts were saying, here, we're going to send you to AA. There wasn't any place else to send people. Now there is an awareness that there are alternatives, but in my experience and if you look at the numbers, just the numbers, nobody's got a track record like Alcoholics Anonymous. Nobody's got the lineage, the history, the only claim that AA has ever made for itself is it works. It really does. That's all they say. It works if you work. So I'll just leave it at that. I wish there were others, but again, do you qualify for Al-Anon? Of course you do. Of course you do. And if you're thinking, maybe I'm getting addicted to my own thinking, you're not going to think your way out of that. Just consider this for a minute. If this is the problem, to apply this to the problem is not gonna change anything. But being in a community of like-minded people, I think that's the key. And wherever we find community seems to be important, very important. People who tell the truth, that's even better. Okay.
Any other questions in the room here?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I adored that last poem,
Oh,
the
thank you.
closing, and you wrote that?
Yeah. Thank you.
Just sacredly cracked me. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you very much. Oh, and there's another, I showed you the image of the phoenix. This is a poem by D.H. Lawrence, which is just beautiful. Phoenix by D.H. Lawrence. And this is like, if you're coming to a 12-step program, imagine this is what you got confronted with. Phoenix by D.H. Lawrence. Are you willing to be sponged out, erased, canceled, made nothing? Are you willing to be made nothing, dipped into oblivion? If not, you will never really change. The phoenix renews her youth only when she is burnt alive, burnt down to hot and flocculent ash. Then the small stirring of a new small bub in the nest with strands of down like floating ash shows that she is renewing her youth like the eagle, immortal bird. It's the death and resurrection deal, right? Yeah.
Thank you so much, John. I think I was able to get the RSVPs for the event today, and so many people had said how they were looking forward to hearing you. They were really looking forward to coming back to La Casa. This was such a great initial kickoff to our upcoming year of
Thank you.
events.
I am
And
honored to
appreciate
be
you.
here. It's just a gift. Thank you.
And I think you could see some friends, including Lucia and others.
Lucia! Hello!
Friends, we do have, Sherry's going to end the day, but I wanted to just ask everybody to pick up some food if you're interested. We've got boxes to take home. Please do us that favor. Also, unfortunately, there's not really a way to really view the land today because of the slipperiness, and we really want everybody to be safe, so please don't wander on the land yourself. We promise to invite you up soon when it will be safe and there'll be things to see, and that will be a major feature. And we hope to end on time so you don't have huge traffic to fight.
Yes.
So with that, thank you again for coming. Please fill out those forms that we left for you. I'm around. I have my business cards with me and up at the front. We'd love to hear your comments, your suggestions, and encouragement.
So John, thank you. Remember, think about new acts. You've got some steps to take, maybe, lots of new things to think about. So on behalf of the Immaculate Community, thank you so much for being here today, and we'll see you again sometime.
Thank you very much.